Hi, I'm Wayne Allen Root for Personal Liberty. As one of America's most high-profile libertarians and an outspoken defender of civil liberties, I'm not always a fan of the police. I've written before about the frightening implications of the militarization of America's police. I've written before about police use of excessive force. So I don't take police shootings lightly or the police occupation of an American city. That's precisely why my opinion should carry weight here. Because in this case, I stand strongly behind police officer Darren Wilson. We are witnessing a modern-day, high-tech political and media lynching of an innocent police officer who clearly acted in self-defense, if anyone is actually willing to look honestly and fairly at the facts. That's something that President Obama, Attorney General Eric Holder, and various rabble-rousing, race-baiting black leaders appear incapable of doing. Damn the facts. Obama and Holder are railroading an innocent man to fit their narrative of racism in America. The president desperately needs, as a matter of fact, an indictment and conviction to please his last remaining group of supporters, black Americans. Remember, polls show that Obama is now considered the worst president since World War II, lower rated than even Richard Nixon or Jimmy Carter. Yet, in the last election, Obama received 93% of black votes. This is called sacrificing one police officer's life to placate your last remaining loyal supporters. If by chance Obama and Holder can't get an indictment, and my bet is they won't, it's a sure thing they'll charge an innocent man with trumped-up civil rights violations. I ask my fellow Americans to do something Obama, Attorney General Holder, the media, and those crowds in Ferguson, Missouri don't want to do. Examine the facts as we now know them. Fact, the victim, Michael Brown, allegedly had just robbed a store. Not just any robbery. This was a strong-arm robbery involving thug-like behavior, all caught on video. Fact, blood tests confirm he had drugs in his system. Fact, the use of force is justified if you believe your life's in danger or you're facing a person intent on doing you bodily harm. Brown was a monster of a man, 6'4" or thereabouts, 290 pounds. What would you do if a giant thug came charging at you in an attempt to run you over, knock you down, and take your gun? Wouldn't you believe your life was in danger if the man charging you had already punched you in the face and possibly, allegedly, maybe broken your eye socket? Fact, there are now a dozen witnesses who corroborate Wilson's account of the story. That's police officer Darren Wilson. Fact, Wilson struggled with Brown. People are corroborating that now. Reportedly, Brown severely beat the officer before running away. Wilson followed and ordered him to stop. Brown turned and charged at Wilson. The only witness claiming that Brown was shot in cold blood with his hands up was his cohort, Dorian Johnson, who has an outstanding warrant for theft and was arrested in the past for lying to police. You mean rioting, burning, looting, and national outrage and condemnation were all based on a lying, suspected criminal? To make matters worse, St. Louis media are now reporting that Johnson, again allegedly, has recanted his story. Was this Brown's first run-in with the law? I think knowing that's very integral to the case. Brown's supporters claim he had no adult criminal record. Interesting wording. Well, he just turned 18 only months ago. Did he have a criminal record as a minor? Investigative reporter Charles Johnson has filed a lawsuit to force Missouri to open Brown's juvenile records. Johnson has been told by police that Brown had a juvenile criminal record, but it's been kept for the public. Why? Does it ruin Obama and Holder's narrative? The narrative that Wilson did not know Brown allegedly had just robbed the store is unimportant. What is important is that if indeed Brown did it, he knew. Why? Because the criminal fears being caught. He assumes the cops pulling him over because he knows he did it. The criminal's then emboldened to aggressively take action to escape or hurt the police officer. As the facts show, once again, this is an overzealous reaction to a police shooting that was never based on racism. A police officer was defending his life from a hulking giant thug who had already punched him, possibly broken his eye socket, certainly hurt him, and tried to take his gun away. What would you have done? Let a 290-pound thug knock you down, wrestle away your gun, and kill you? This police officer was just doing his job. All he wanted was to go home safely. There's no end to the hypocrisy of liberals and civil libertarians up in arms about the militarization of police called in to defend taxpayers and small business owners and property owners from criminals, thugs, many of whom were carrying guns and other weapons, burning buildings down. Yet these same liberals and civil libertarians said nothing when armed-to-the-teeth militarized Bureau of Land Management agents showed up at the Bundy Ranch outside Las Vegas, Nevada for a civil matter. Why is militarization versus violent criminals with weapons and Molotov cocktails bad, but militarization against salt-of-the-earth ranchers and taxpayers who have not committed a violent crime good or acceptable. Where were these outraged hypocrites when the Bundy Ranch was under siege by jackbooted, heavily armed government paramilitary agents? Black-on-black violence is an epidemic in America. In any given week, there are 25 dead black Americans lying on the streets of one city, Chicago. As Fox News' Juan Williams, a liberal, pointed out in a recent commentary, more than 90% of young black men are killed not by police or white people, but by other black men. Murder is the #1 cause of death for black males between the ages of 15 and 34. Why does the black community not take action to stop this tragedy? Where's the outrage? Where are the protests? Where's the president? Isn't it absurd that one black man who allegedly might have just committed a robbery being shot by a white police officer causes a nationwide uproar while thousands of black males murdered by other blacks receives a yawn? Where are the black leaders and where is the nation's first black president? Just last week, a young male was shot and killed by police in Salt Lake City. The police officer was black. The unarmed victim was described as white-Hispanic. But there was no national outrage. There was no violence, no looting, no burning. Why is it racist if a white officer shoots a suspect who's black, but just fine if a black officer does? Is it possible both officers were defending their lives? Would there be protests if a black officer had shot Brown? No way. Would there be national outrage if a black officer shot a white suspect who was charging at him after already possibly, allegedly breaking his eye socket or certainly hurting him? No way. Would there be rioting in the streets of Ferguson if a black male murdered another young black male? Well, there's no rioting in Chicago. Of course not. It wouldn't happen. And where's the outrage over black on white crime? Race-based hate crime surged in Washington, D.C. last year. Almost all of the increase involved black criminals and white victims. Where's the national outrage? Where are the protests? And where's the president? And if white police shooting blacks is a national issue, why isn't black criminals gunning down policemen or even white policemen a national issue? In just the past 60 days, 5 white police officers were murdered by black criminals. Why hasn't this sparked national outrage? Here are the names of the dead policemen. Detective Melvin Santiago, Officer Jeffrey Westerfield, Officer Perry Wren, Deputy Sheriff Alan Bears, Detective Charles Dinwiddie. I feel for their families. I have a few questions for our president. Why has Obama never said a word about out-of-control black violent crime in America? Why has he never said a word about police officers, white or black, being gunned down? To me, police officers are blue, the thin blue line. Why were there more U.S. government dignitaries at Brown's funeral than at Margaret Thatcher's funeral? Why has Obama made the Michael Brown incident into a national outrage, but he says and does nothing about a hero Marine being held for months in a Mexican prison on trumped-up charges? Strange priorities. I, for one, stand with Officer Darren Wilson. I will raise money for his defense if needed. I will organize protests against any attempt to prosecute this police officer, either for murder or on trumped-up, politicized civil rights charges. Have no doubt, Wilson's life and freedom are in danger. It will take the silent majority of tax-paying, law-abiding American citizens to stand together to stop an innocent hero police officer, yes, I said it, hero police officer, from being railroaded to satisfy political correctness and the racist agenda of an unpopular, embittered president. The real irony is that Holder seems intent on appointing a special prosecutor to railroad Officer Wilson, when the special prosecutor should be appointed to investigate the serious crimes of Obama and Attorney General Holder. I'm Wayne Alaroot for Personal Liberty. See you next week. God bless America.